we're here with Craig Murray, a former British ambassador here in Dundee, and who's also been Dundee University's rector, as well as the president of the Students' Union. Is that correct?
Yeah, all of that.
Now, Craig, it's really great to have you here because you have a unique perspective on the referendum and what's going on. And I'm right in saying that you were in the Foreign Office for 20 years for the UK. Is that right?
Yeah, I was in diplomatic service for 20 years, just over. So I very much saw the UK from the inside, if you like.
Okay. And also, tell me, you've been a previous owner of a Green Goddess fire engine, so this is a familiar environment for you, is that right?
Yeah, that's very true. No, when I left the Foreign Office over the the Iraq War and torture and extraordinary rendition, we'll talk about that. But when I left in 2005, I went and stood against Jack Straw in the election in his Blackburn constituency. So I bought a Green Goddess because they're great campaigning vehicles, as you know, and we followed him all around Blackburn, shouting, "That man is a war criminal," with the sirens on, which was, I mean, we got over 5% of the vote and saved our deposit doing that. So, happy memories being in one of these.
Now, a lot of people don't know your face, but they do know who you are because you write articles and post them freely on the internet. And what is it called again?
My blog's just craigmurray.org.uk.
Okay. And what is it you're generally writing about?
Generally, I'm writing about international affairs, foreign policy, and if you like, the security state, the deprivation of our civil liberties, and essentially a lot of the lies that government tells about foreign policy, about what they're doing abroad. I still have an awful lot of friends in the Foreign Office who feed me information which is useful. If I can just give one example of that, recently I was contacted by someone serving in the United States who told me that the British government was secretly lobbying the White House and lobbying the State Department against the publication of the Senate report on extraordinary rendition, because they thought the Senate report would contain a lot of information about UK involvement in torture. And the publication of this report anyway, between the CIA and the White House and the Senate, has been a controversial matter in the United States, but the UK's got involved trying to keep all that information secret because they don't want anything to come out. And the Americans, of course, are actually slightly better on freedom of information than we are. So the government are really scared that a lot of truth is going to come out there.
Tell me, when people think of UK foreign policy, they have mixed messages. We're told by the UK government they're doing it for a protection. I've just read today in the Daily Express, the biggest threat to our society now is ISIS and Iraq. Then on the other side, of course, we find ourselves in foreign illegal wars. What is the mindset in the UK government, and what are they setting out to achieve?
Yeah. Well, I think, one thing I can say to you for certain, from over 20 years' experience, over 6 years of them as a member of what they call the senior civil service in grades in Whitehall, it's about money. Basically, the companies that sponsor and pay the politicians, that pay their officers, that make big donations to the Tory party, that give them jobs after they retire, those companies have interests they want advanced. And that, more than anything else, is what pushes foreign policy. So, Libya was about the interests of British Petroleum and about the interests of Heritage Oil. In Afghanistan, I saw it, where it was actually, strangely enough, the policy in Afghanistan was about the interests of Enron and other American oil companies who wanted to bring out Central Asian gas from Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan over Afghanistan through the Trans-African pipeline they were planning to build. And that's what lay behind the Afghan war. And in fact, people don't realise, but a Texan company called Unocal, of which George Bush Sr. Was on the board, actually brought out representatives of the Taliban in 1998 and 2000 to Houston for talks about whether the Taliban would guard the pipeline for the Americans.
That's extraordinary.
And when the Taliban refused to do that, that's when they went to their plan B, which was to invade Afghanistan and occupy Afghanistan in the hope of building a pipeline themselves. Now, in the end, it didn't work because the occupation was never, resistance was just too strong to the occupation. But those are real things. I mean, I've seen the minutes of the meetings in Houston with the Taliban. I've seen the minutes of the meetings in Houston with the Uzbek government about gaining the gas supply to take through the pipeline. These are not academic constructs. I'm not a sort of Marxist academic making a theory about imperialism and capitalism. You know, these are real facts with real contracts. And if you look behind all the recent wars, they're about making money for energy companies. And then when you get something like ISIS arrive, ISIS has happened because of our invasion of Iraq. I mean, if we hadn't invaded Iraq, it would never have happened. So now to turn around and say it's not that great a threat anyway. I mean, thankfully, there's absolutely no evidence that ISIS intends to attack the UK. If we go bombing Iraq again, certainly they will attack us. There's no doubt about it. All the evidence is that terrorist attacks in the UK, all the terrorists who have actually made attacks in the UK, all of them have said that it's because of our invading other countries. And why don't we believe them? You know,
yes.
If we weren't invading other countries, nobody would be attacking us here.
And you're quite a well-known campaigner in the independence movement. How did you get from being a British ambassador to where you are now?
Well, I think I was fairly naive, I guess, in my early years in the Foreign Office. I was quite patriotic about being British, you know. And the day I went out there with that British flag flying on my Range Rover, you know, as I was the ambassador for the first time, because I was in the office for sort of 17 years before I made the grade of ambassador. And I might say, without undue modesty, that I was actually Britain's youngest ambassador when I was appointed, so my career was going very well. I was very, very proud of myself, very proud of what I'd achieved, and very proud of the country I represented. Then 6 months later, I discovered in the country where I was ambassador, not only were there these dodgy contracts going on for oil and gas and related to Afghanistan, but we were sending people under extraordinary rendition. We and the Americans were sending people in order to be tortured.
And what kind of torture are we talking about here?
We're talking, the most usual form of torture was attacks on the genitals. I think a lot of people who actually do torture are sexual sadists as well, because very often, I know genitals are painful, but the way they target the genitals and use rape and mutilation and that kind of thing, I think there's almost always an element of sexual sadism in it, and I think that's probably been true through the centuries. But the torturers with whom the British and the American government were cooperating were very much focused on sexual attack and genital attack, but also talking people having their fingernails pulled out, and on one well-attested occasion I investigated, on which we actually had, you know, proper pathologist reports. One instance of a dissident being boiled alive. I think there were more than just one boiled alive.
And the British government is always aware of this.
Yeah, the British government prefers to turn a blind eye and pretend it doesn't know. And what it says is that it's sending his people, like when Belhaj was sent to Libya. You know, the British government will just say the Libyan government wanted him, we sent him there, and we didn't know what happened to him afterwards. And as the ambassador, your job is not to look, not to notice. But I did notice, and I sent them detailed reports. Of course, they always do know, but they don't want to know officially. And one thing I was told was that the Secretary of State, which was Jack Straw, and the head of the diplomatic service, Lord Jay, were angry with me because I put this stuff in writing.
Did it put your job in, obviously, a compromised position? What did you do next?
Yeah, no, I mean, ultimately I got sacked, or resigned, whichever way you look at it. But no, I mean, it became very plain to me that either I had to go along with torture, or at least shut up about torture. I'd been proud of Britain, you know, and then to find out that this country is involved in torturing people to death, it's just not something I could continue doing. I just couldn't do the job anymore. And
Scotland votes yes in September. How do you think Scotland? How is Scotland going to be different in foreign policy to the rest of the UK? Because they've been so closely interwoven up until now.
Yeah, no, I think Scotland has an amazing chance to break away from this, because, you know, the UK is a rogue state. It still thinks it's a great imperial nation. In fact, it's just a sidekick to the Americans, but it's involved in this, you know, neo-colonial, neo-imperialist invasion of other countries, and it doesn't stop. You know, we've under Cameron, we bombed Libya. We killed 15,000 people in Sirte alone when we bombed Libya. It's something one of the many things the BBC never tell you. And look at Libya now, total disaster. Iraq's a total disaster. All these wars are carried out for the benefit of a few people, who hope to get wealthy from them. We can move away from that in Scotland. We can behave like a civilized, peaceful country. We can have defence forces which are for defence, not attack. We can contribute to United Nations peacekeeping forces, which are always short of good troops. We can contribute to the fabric of international law instead of breaking international law. So now I want to represent a country that doesn't abuse human rights and doesn't attack other countries and abides by international law. That's the Scotland I want to see.
So what final message would you give to those who are watching this film just now and then perhaps maybe undecided?
I think most people actually understand. I could see it from the inside. I had the advantage of seeing the actual evidence. But I think most people understand that the United Kingdom, in its recent wars, people have been lied to. The truth of the wars hasn't been told. The United Kingdom is a dangerous state, and the number of people who benefit from it are very small. And the politicians are in the pockets of corporate interests and arms interests. And that's going to continue. The United Kingdom is going to continue like that. And if you want to live in a country that you can be proud of, if you want to live in a country which has a decent moral basis, if you really want to be a decent human being who's doing good in the world, who's not benefiting from pillage and rape and slaughter and maiming, because that's what goes on in war, then you need to pull out of the United Kingdom, because it's not a state anybody could want to live in now.
Jake, thank you very much.
Dundee crossed the Oban and right down the Port of Leith. They're going to ask the people, is independence best? I'm thinking bonnie Scotland, that the answer could be yes.